Good day, nerds, and welcome to episode 18 of the Nerd Cantina show. Today, Steve and I host a Cantina conversation with Tim Lee. Tim Lee is a comedian. In fact, he's a scientist turned comedian. And in this episode, we have a discussion around how he went from PhD to open mics and now hosting Nerd Comedy Night in Carlsbad, California. We have a complete conversation around really his background, and then we take it into some scientific passions of his. Just have a really spectacular conversation. So, won't waste any more time here with the intro. Let's just get to it. Stick around, nerds.
Calling back all nerds. Nerds!
All right, nerd. Today we've got a Cantina conversation with somebody that I've recently gone and seen and enjoyed a show by this comedian, and immediately reached out and asked if he'd like to have a conversation. So today we're speaking with comedian Tim Lee. Tim's got a unique background in the sense that he's a nerd first. He studied ecology and evolution. Later got his PhD from UC Davis and worked on developing simulation and analytical models of population dynamics. So we're talking true nerd, and really what we're trying to figure out is, Tim, what the hell went wrong?
Too many things. You don't go from scientist to comedian in a single step. You have to make a series of bad decisions for that to happen. Originally I was just not happy with what I was doing after all. I went to grad school. I really liked the idea of studying population dynamics, and I was pretty gung-ho. I had a job at Scripps Institute of Oceanography working on whales, dolphins, and porpoises, and it was pretty cool, and then I went to grad school, and I had a few good years, and then I slowly realized I didn't want to be a college professor. I'm not really cut out for the politics of academia, and academia, in my opinion, has become the new church.
I've listened to many podcasts with academia discussions of that same tone.
It really has. They become the morality police first, and then pursuers of fact and truth second, which is unfortunate. But the morality police used to be the church, and that sort of died off, at least where I am. And so academia has sort of stepped into that role. And that's not really what my dream of academia was. And so dream was more of disinterested pursuit of the truth, which was the original intent of academia. And so I'm like, I'm just not going to do very well in this environment. So I moved along.
What made you pivot towards comedy? Did you always, were you a class clown in the National Honor Society? Were you, did you carry that from a young age, or was it something that you kind of realized you wanted to do later on in life?
Much later in life, I always liked listening to comedians being interviewed because they seemed very smart. And when I listened to actors being interviewed, they didn't seem smart. Their characters were more interesting than they were, which I get. It's a talent, right? You have to essentially assume someone else's personality, and that does take a lot of brain power. But found that a lot of actors just are not that interesting when they're not playing someone else. So that, to me, was hard to see. So I thought, if I ever try performing arts, I'll try comedy, just because I was more impressed with how comedians sounded when they were interviewed. And I know the acting community hates me after saying that. But I don't care. It's the truth. That is how I felt. I know there's a lot of, there are smart actors now. I've met quite a few of them. But
so did you go through any formal training after later on in life? I'm in Chicago, so we have the famous Second City where they just churn out comedians left and right like a cookie factory. So did you pursue any kind of improv training or anything like that?
No, actually I did not. So that was probably, I don't know if that was a mistake, but what I did was I read a bunch of books written by comedians. So and I read one book which I actually always recommend to people. It's called Comic Insights by a comedian named Franklin Ajay, who was very sort of talented comic, although not as popular as some of the other comics in the late 80s. And it's probably the best book on starting comedy I've read. So I read through his book, and then, I read through Jay Leno's book and, Seinfeld's book. I read Richard Pryor. Basically everyone said who was a great comedian. I read their book. And then I just started to write some jokes. And I went to an open mic at a laundromat / cafe in San Francisco called Brainwash. The host there was Tony Sparks, and he brought me up on stage, and I told my jokes, and I can still remember who laughed at which jokes.
Yeah.
So Guy Branum was there, and he laughed at a joke that I did that was fairly specific. Never ever got a laugh again. It was a joke about San Francisco. And I didn't do particularly great. I didn't do particularly bad, but I had reasonable expectations because I'd read the book about what to expect your first time doing comedy, and I really liked it. So I kept going back. I'd never done anything like that before. I'd never been on stage, never done any performing arts at all. I wasn't in a high school play. I wasn't in the choir. I didn't do any of that stuff. So it was a whole new world to me, and I thought it was pretty exciting, and I was like, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah,
so just started going to open mics.
It's an exhilarating experience to have to get on stage in front of people and perform. I did it in high school, and yeah, it's one of those natural rushes that you go through.
It is, yeah. It's definitely, it gets your adrenaline going. It's something that I enjoy a lot now. When it goes well, I really like it. But when it goes bad, I don't like it.
Yeah. I think I joke around with some colleagues. So we've joked about wanting to do the experience of like an open mic writing. Not because I think I'm going to be good at it, because I just want to see how my psyche survives bombing, and just see what that feels like. Where I think I'm funny, and a bunch of people who showed up wanting to laugh didn't find a reason to laugh with anything I had to say. So I'm just, that's got to be a unique experience.
It's on the bucket list.
It is on the bucket list for sure.
Sheer embarrassment. Put it on the list.
One thing I did that helped me get used to that sort of uncomfortable experience of being on stage, and this really actually probably helped me more than anything else, was to go out by myself at night and just introduce myself to people, like at bars and wherever around San Francisco, restaurants or whatnot. People are like, what is this guy doing out by himself talking to people? I never allowed myself to have a beer or anything to relax. And it really did, because people are very suspicious of why someone is out by themselves.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so then when I got on stage, at least people they weren't suspicious. They're like, oh, this guy is supposed to be talking to us. This is okay. And it really made me feel a lot better.
Do you find it helped at all with being able to just handle strangers and, being able to speak in front of an entire room full of strangers, just being able to go and converse with a random person? It kind of helps you get that comfortability on stage. Yeah,
it definitely worked for me. It was the thing that helped me the most, getting comfortable on stage, was just going out completely sober to any place where there's a lot of people and making myself talk to people. Because, again, you're talking to strangers. They're suspicious of why you're out by yourself. As soon as you're out by yourself, people think there's something wrong with you. I don't know why, but it is true. You just have to get past that uncomfortable moment and have a conversation with someone. And it's sort of like that on stage. You have to get past the uncomfortable part of getting up there and get to the point where it seems natural. I felt technique really helped me more than anything else. And now, I try and get on stage as much as I can, but you can't do that in the beginning. No one's going to let you on stage. So you go to these open mics, and sometimes there's, two other comics is the audience. So it's hard to even feel like you're in a conversation. They don't even really want to hear what you have to say. They're there to tell their jokes. They're only listening to you so they can get the opportunity to speak. I think the early stages of comedy really just taught me to appreciate the later stages of comedy.
So how long ago was the laundromat? When was that?
Oh, God. So that must have been at least 12 years ago.
Wow.
Okay.
Still in San Francisco, yeah. It's a long time ago.
Okay, so how does that then start to transition from that kind of open mic setting at the laundromat, and then progress into where you're going from kind of open mic trying it out to calling yourself a comedian, and you're going more to like dedicated shows and things?
Well, anyone can call themselves a comedian.
See, I think
Do
I'm
you
funny.
let everybody call themselves a comedian?
I'm funny, but I don't know if I'd call myself a comedian.
There is no point where you pass where people can say, "Oh, you're now a comedian."
I said the same
no
thing.
there's no like tribal setting that you need to go and sit in and get branded as a comedian by others.
I think that there should be. I mean, in San Francisco, it was getting up on stage and doing well at the Punchline, which was sort of club owned by Live Nation. At the time, it was owned by Clear Channel, I think, but Live Nation bought him out. That was the place where you go and like, oh, if you did well at the Punchline, now you're a comedian. There really is, it's completely arbitrary. For me, I hated the open mic scene enough that I was willing to drive anywhere where there was a paid audience willing to listen. I drove out to Fairfield, which in the East Bay, where there was a club called Pepper Bellies, which doesn't exist anymore, where they would pretty much let you up and do 3 minutes as long as you emailed them and said, "Hey, I think I'm funny." You got to in front of a live audience. So I'd drive 3.5 hours round trip just to get in front of a real audience. And then if you did well, the next time they give you 5 minutes or whatnot. And, quote, real comedians are not going to drive 3.5 hours for a 5 minute set. So you were not competing with the high end people yet. But I tried to get up as much as I could in front of an audience that was, what I called consensual comedy. Too many open mics are, we didn't know there was going to be comedy. We don't like comedy. We're not expecting it. We don't want to hear comedy. Too bad you're getting comedy. That's what an open mic. That's non-consensual comedy. I wanted some place where people were expecting jokes and wanted to laugh.
I came for Mexican food. I'm being attacked by comedy.
That's what my new room is like.
I was about to say, and that's nerd comedy night the other night. But I guess at that time, so 12 years ago, what was your 9 to 5? So you're doing those 3-hour drives. I imagine you were still working in your field at that point.
Yeah, well, I think at that point I was working in technology. So I must have been working at Schwab or Sensage, I think, at that point in time. It was Schwab. Yeah, so I was writing code for a platform in San Francisco. That's what got me to move down there. I'd worked at HP for a little bit, doing some research and development for them. That was out in Sacramento. It's sort of in the suburbs there. And, still pretty young. I'm like, man, this is really boring. I have to find a way out of here real quick. And, at that point in time, there wasn't a lot of job transfer for computer programmers. And I'm like, I will take a pay cut to get out of Sacramento. And so I did. I took a big pay cut to go down to San Francisco. And it was totally worth it because then I was around people who, didn't already have kids like I do now. My life is boring to a single person.
Yeah. I mean, that's what happens. They weigh you down, man. They weigh you down.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful now. I love having my kids and spending time with my kids, but it's boring if you don't to be around people with kids if you don't have them yourself. I mean, I'm not exactly a good wingman anymore or anything that you might need as a single.
Oh, 4 times a year, I'm the fucking man. There's like a wedding or a birthday party. Like there's 4 occasions a year where I am still a fucking champion. But 361, it's shut the fuck down. Like it's just how it goes.
I don't even get the 4. Maybe I do like 1.5. But that's about it for me. Yeah, I completely understand.
You guys are brothers.
But I was boring always. Yes, yeah. We're brothers.
Which one of you did better with ladies?
Yeah, it's definitely that guy because I've literally been with my wife for more than 50% of my life at this point in time.
He went to junior prom with his wife.
So some could say I did better with ladies because I roped one in and just tethered her down forever.
Yeah, I guess
it depends on what you're considering success.
Subjective.
Yeah,
depends on what your goals with the ladies are.
It sounds like you did well. Actually, you found a good woman and you stuck with her. That actually sounds like a good story. Most guys can't do that, right?
No, yeah. And if you ask her, she'll say she stuck with me. It's all a matter of perspective. It's all just depends on where you're coming from. But so you're style, the nerd comedy, did you immediately kind of gravitate towards that because that's, you said you were writing code in what is essentially Silicon Valley. You are a nerd.
Yeah.
Was your comedy always in that realm, or were you trying out other things, observational comedy at first before you kind of got into what you're doing now?
When I started, I wanted to write sort of clever jokes, clean, clever jokes. That was my goal, because those were the comics I liked the most at the time. Hedberg was still fairly popular back then. He was writing very clever, short jokes. And, I hoped that I could write like that. And then it became nerdier and nerdier just because those were the topics that I thought about, right? I mean, it's just sort of a reflection of what you care about. And other people don't care about the same things that I care about because they're not me. And so, there's some really nerdy topics that I wanted to talk about that other people didn't understand. So I started doing them as sort of a parody of a science seminar, because I'd done a lot of that in grad school. And I'd actually thrown some gag slides into my talks in grad school. So I already had a background doing that. So it wasn't really a big leap to do a funny PowerPoint talk while I was doing comedy. It's actually just, I didn't think of it as being that different, other than I needed a projector and screen to do it. So, I guess it's just sort of a reflection of how I think and how I got things done.
So how long of a span have you been doing that kind of that niche of smart comedy, we'll call it, and have you seen your audience get smarter or less, we'll call it less intelligent, over that span of a decade?
Get smaller, in other words. No, I would say, I didn't. It's hard to say because I didn't start off with a plan to do. Here's the people I want to appeal to. Blah 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 blah. I wanted jokes that I would sort of be proud of, and that were a reflection of me. Now you can't always do that, right? Not all your jokes are going to be good. You're going to write a lot of crap. But the people that liked my jokes, lo and behold, tended to be kind of nerdy, and a lot of them were very smart people, and they'd introduce themselves to me and like, oh, I want to be on your email list, and they all had nerdy jobs. Some of them were researchers, some of them were programmers, some of them
a lot of .edus.
Yeah. Anything, and I was like, oh, and then at some point you just realize, I guess this is what I do, right? And a lot of, I watched other people turn into pot comics. They're just kind of stoned on stage all the time, and all their fans were people that loved getting high, and now they do shows on every April 20th as the pot comic or whatever, and I guess you just kind of get pulled towards a facet of who you are or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it helps you just to be authentic on stage, and it's going to help kind of bridge that, like you said, that initial awkwardness when you're trying to be comfortable with your audience. If you're comfortable with what you're doing because it's in your natural niche, it comes across. I saw, I talked to you about it when we met. Every time I went into Facebook, because we administer the Nerd Cantina, so your nerd comedy night, and your Facebook ads.
We have the same SEO.
The algorithm has got me. It's got me good. There's every time I went on there, and I loved just watching then your YouTube clips and watching the kind of the topics that you're talking about, because it's got me, right? The algorithm knew me well. Yeah. It's exactly what I want. And I think there's plenty of people, and nerds are oddly cool now, I guess. Maybe that's self-serving because I'm a nerd. But being a nerd has become so popular now that it's not like you've narrowed your audience to some tiny niche. No, it's a pretty massive niche these days.
Yeah, people aspire to be nerds. It's very, very strange. It was not a positive thing at all when I was young. I guess really it is the success of Silicon Valley and the amount of money that nerds came into that really turned nerddom from being sort of a bad thing into being a good thing.
Smart people got rich.
Yeah.
Basically what happened, right? It's all new money. All the new money went to nerds.
Yeah, to .coms.
That's all it takes. So what was the first, I guess, comedy store owner or MC or whatever else that when you showed up and said, hey, can I set up this projector real fast?
I'm gonna need an outlet. I'm gonna need an outlet.
A lot of people are. It's divisive, but Molly at the Punchline in San Francisco was really cool about it. Actually, she really liked it.
Oh yeah,
I was surprised because there wasn't a lot of other people doing anything in that vein. I didn't really remember anyone else doing anything like that. So she's like, "Yeah, do whatever you want to do." So I guess I have to give her some props for doing that. That was a big deal for a real club, and I did it. I guess for the first time in front of an audience. Not at grad school. I think the first time I did like PowerPoint jokes was at the Rose and Crown in Palo Alto, which again is near education in Silicon Valley, and the audience really liked it there. I guess if it had not done well there, I probably just would can the whole thing. You give it one or two tries, and then you move on to your next bit. But it did really well there. It was a bar. It wasn't very well set out. So I thought, if it does well here, I'll probably try it other places. And, people liked it. So you just keep doing it. And it, got picked up quite a bit online, YouTube and things like that. And all of a sudden it becomes your thing. You just keep working on it and it becomes your thing.
Yeah,
and
you're that dude.
You're that dude. Yes. The nerd. It is strange. This whole nerd phenomenon has taken over. And in entertainment, a lot of the people that are doing nerd entertainment, not us three here, but other people.
Well, I've said it on the podcast before. It is a little annoying because as you were the lone person reading the comics or caring about these characters, now every asshole goes to Target. Every asshole goes to Target and buys that $10 Flash shirt. And walks around the streets like I'm in the know. Like look at me. Yeah, he runs fast, right? This is the one that runs fast. Yeah, okay. And we're all standing over here like this motherfucker. Like, yeah.
And here you are with your Darth Vader hand tattoos.
Yeah, I literally have Sith Lord tattooed across my knuckles. Like, and I'm watching this dude
for nothing.
Yeah, you did that after it became popular.
Yeah, I know. The really bad part of it, speaking of nerd shirts, is that before I got the Sith Lord tattoos, I had an abundance of Star Wars t-shirts because I like to express myself in obscure t-shirts. But now, ever since I got the Sith Lord tattoos, if I wear a Star Wars shirt out in public, at least one asshole comes up to me and is like, man, you really love Star Wars, huh, man? And it's like, shit, like the tattoos take me up to that edge, and the minute I put on that t-shirt, I jump right over it, and they're just like, look at this dude, man, he fucking loves Star Wars, bro, check this out. And I have this whole closet full of Star Wars shirts that I really don't even want to wear anymore.
You have to go out in a stormtrooper outfit from now on.
It kind of defeats the purpose.
Now you're doing a lot of stuff. I've watching like your YouTube videos, and you just, there's a lot of these short clips that you're doing on all kinds of nerd topics in your own way, like global warming and AI and the blogs that you're writing on that type of stuff. Is this just now, are you like deeply involved in following all these things, and it's just, hey make a good little joke about those things?
I try and put out a video a week now on YouTube just for my own personal satisfaction, I guess.
Yeah.
Because YouTube penalizes you if you don't put anything out regularly anymore. Just like do whatever you want to do on whatever schedule you want to do, and they didn't care.
No.
Now, if you don't put stuff out regularly,
if you're not feeding the beast,
I can has all the content.
They're like, we won't even let you contact your subscribers if you're not putting stuff out regularly. So I'm like, I guess I'm going to do something every week. That's still evolving, so I have, it's just my thoughts on different like science news for the most part. There's things I care about a lot. The opioid crisis to me, which was essentially the perversion of science, very wealthy industry trying to pass stuff off as science that clearly was not, and it continues to happen. in the pharmaceutical business where they design the experiments that they hand the FDA, and they handpick the people to run the experiments. And so they have fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to do experiments that are most likely to present the evidence that they need, and they have to pick the people that are most likely to present the evidence. And that's not the way science is done. Science isn't done like where you present the evidence in the light most favorable to your clients. That's not how it's done. It's supposed to be disinterested pursuit of the truth, where you get the best people to do the best research possible and present that to the peers. And that is not happening, and that is at the root, the opioid crisis, and it's why we're prescribing crystal meth to little boys, is because people are not doing good science. They're doing paid-for science as advocacy, and it is a huge problem. So that is something I'm passionate about, and I don't hear many people talking about because, for many reasons.
Lots of money.
Lots of money. There is no money in trying to oppose paid-for research. People, there's just nothing in that. And not only that, every time I turn on YouTube now, one of the sponsors of a video I'm watching is a pharmaceutical ad.
I was just talking about that today. It's like, what? Aren't the doctors supposed to tell me what meds I need, not, a commercial during the Cubs game I'm watching? Like,
no, you're supposed to come into the doctor with a
doc,
thought process of which drug I really want.
I think I really need this. It does talk about anal leakage and possible death, but I really think this is something I need to try. Like, it just blows my mind that they pitch it to where patients should be going to their doctor and recommending the prescription they want rather than a medically trained fucking man telling me what my body needs. It's totally back-asswards.
Everything is around it's getting around science is basically what it's doing. They don't want your doctor to decide what you need. You decide your doctor's just a conduit to the drug you want. And it's frustrating because that used to be such a trusted relationship. I don't know. I grew up with one doctor, and he knew me, and I pretty much trusted whatever he told me. Take this, whatever it is. And now I have no idea who my doctor is, but I do know the pharma rep's been there at least 9 times before I have, and he's probably much more familiar with the pharma rep than he is with me. And that has nothing to do with science. That has to do with, I guess, influence, how the whole process has turned into. And this, they're spending so little money on R&D now. The last time I checked, it was less than 20%.
I was going to say around 20%, a little less.
None of it's R&D. It's all marketing. And keep jacking up the prices. I can go into this forever, but, you buy out a company that's selling a drug for $100 a pop. You get a huge loan to buy out the company. And to pay back the loan, you need to jack up the price. This is what Valiant did over and over again. It has nothing to do with science, right? They're not jacking up the price to pay for more R&D. They're jacking up the price to pay for the loan so they could buy out the company so they could jack up the price. And it's just become such a perversion. And every time they're talking about their R&D investments. It's nothing. It's nothing anymore.
Well, and like you said, the problem is the people doing the research, part of it, because it's a controlled substance, are the pharmaceutical companies in the first place, and they have a very good reason to not necessarily tell a complete truth within their research.
Yes, and the scientists outside of academia get so much, or scientists outside of the pharmaceutical business in academia and other places get so much money from pharmaceutical research, they do not want to piss them off. They don't want to put negative results in their abstracts. So I've seen all kinds of papers where the negative stuff about the substance is not in the abstract. Sometimes it's only in the footnotes. And so if you read a paper, you're not going to know the dangers unless you sit there for hours on end prying through every paper like this is written to hide bad stuff, which you shouldn't have to do. That's not what science is about. Science isn't being a lawyer for a position, right? You're not trying to hide everything bad that your client has done and present it in the light most favorable. You're supposed to give an objective result. So if a drug causes an increase in suicide in teens, that needs to be in the abstract, not in a footnote.
Well, what a profit motive driven field does to good science, right? I mean, I've always ethically believed that there's two things that we should not profit off of as a society is prisons and medicine. You shouldn't have a profit motive to keep me sick, and you shouldn't have a profit motive to make me a criminal. That totally goes against, life and the pursuit of happiness and all that fun jazz. So it's what happens when we let money drive our motives.
Yeah, and I guess you came at it from a larger philosophical angle than I did. For me, it was just like, I loved science. To me, science was the only way to get to the truth. And to see people sort of present this in another way, it sort of hurt me right down here. And, I'd like to see us get back to letting scientists be scientists without any conflict of interest and move forward in the...
Well, I had wrote a small article on how podcasting is now like a modern day education. You can learn all kinds of stuff, for free just by listening to podcasts. We have we're in the day and age of the internet where all the information is basically at your fingertips. So we are at like the smartest age in human history, yet we are surrounded by the dumbest shit you could possibly imagine on a daily basis. Like, how does something like that actually occur to where we are basking in human intelligence, yet wading in the shallow end of the fucking gene pool? Like, it blows my mind all the time.
I think you made what you did was make an assumption, though, that people actually are listening to those podcasts that further their education. The content exists. It doesn't mean that it's actually being consumed at a beneficial level.
Yeah, I forget.
So that's two different things. In the end,
you
it's
could
the same thing.
lead a horse to water.
I could watch a lot of documentaries on TV too, or I could just leave HGTV on all day long and watch a new kitchen get built.
Yeah, I watch reality TV. I'm not gonna lie.
There you go. There's that shallow gene pool right there.
Hey, sometimes you don't want to swim. You just want to bob.
Wait, yeah, relax your mind. Facebook and Twitter are my two favorite. I always said that Facebook is popular because people love themselves. And Twitter is popular because people hate others.
That's a very good analogy. Absolutely. That's a very good analogy.
That I've never really thought about it that way, but that is exactly how people use it.
It is. And Twitter reminds me of the freeway because you have an anonymous personality, right? People are. Can we swear on this? I guess we should.
I swear all the time.
I'm
a horrible human being. It's okay.
I always say people are assholes in traffic because they know you can't get out of your car and go kick their ass. And people are assholes on Twitter because of the same. They hide behind anonymous personas.
Every time I get stuck in traffic, I pray somebody opens their door. I wait. I wait for it. I actively clutch my steering wheel, waiting to see somebody's door crack open because I will be at your fucking window so fucking fast. I see the window roll down and I get excited, like
But all this stuff it is kind of funny times in the sense that we talk about like being nerds and openly nerd culture is popular, which means you think that popularism would translate towards people respecting and desiring good science, but then you still get global warming can't exist and nobody gives a shit about whether good science is being done. And there's still so much denial of real science or not even worth looking into whether there was real science or not and just accepting headlines as is.
We have a fear of smallpox coming back. Like this is real. This is what's happening in real life due to the just willful ignorance, I guess you'd call it now, because there's no excuse to be dumb in the modern age, really. Like let's figure it. Like,
yeah, but this gets a little bit back to what I was saying earlier. People don't know what to trust. Everything presented is science. So they went to their doctors, and the doctor said this OxyContin is not addictive. We found that less than 1% of people. You don't have anything to worry about. We have studies. I'm a scientist. You can trust me. And pretty soon, 400,000 people have died. And we have a problem with kids not having parents, and our foster system is overwhelmed. They're like, well, if that wasn't true, why should I believe you on this other stuff? And so people are skeptical. I feel like in some ways, it's impossible for people. I spend a lot of time reading papers still, and it still takes me a long time to sort through stuff. So the average person doesn't have the time to do that. And sometimes some of them just don't have the capability, to read through the statistics and sort out, is this guy making any sense?
The average American gets their news from internet headlines. They don't even click the article.
Yeah.
It's just whatever it said.
They have no idea what to trust. What sounds scientific is fine for them. For me, when I'm talking about global warming, if people are not, if they don't think the world is getting warmer, I always point to the same thing, which is that the sea level is rising. We know the sea level is rising. I live right by the coast, about 3 millimeters a year. We have satellites pointing to that. And there is no other way for the sea level to rise other than for the world to be getting warmer. It takes a tremendous amount of energy, about a billion nuclear bombs worth of energy just to heat the ocean by 1 degree. So we are retaining energy from the sun in order for sea level to rise. And most people will accept that. Now, I found that most people will accept that there's, that sea level rise is anthropogenic, that it's being caused by greenhouse gases. There's different ways of knowing that. The easiest way is that we can trace the carbon dioxide or the carbon in the atmosphere by the radioisotopes. So we know where it's coming from. The most controversial part, and this is where I think people still debate, is how alarmist we should be about it. So for me personally, I like to take the economic point of view that basically just from sea level rise, even if you discount any hurricanes or anything like that, it's more controversial or less certain. Sea level rise we know is being caused by global warming. That alone, the cost of that is going to wipe out any profits from fossil fuel mining, from oil, coal, and you think about the amount of real estate we're going to lose. And not only that, on the West Coast, we have this huge problem with saltwater intrusion. So trying to get more fresh water, which is what we're going to have to do, it's a very expensive process. Everyone's doing these desalination plants so we can have enough water for crops and everything else.
I'm hugged up on the Great Lakes. I'm gonna hang out over here, guys. I'm in the high ground plains. I got a giant pool in my backyard I can drink out of anytime I want. Yeah,
you guys are set. We're not.
I'm bunkering down in the Midwest. I mean, with global warming, my climate will probably end up being more like Arkansas's in the next 10 years, anyways. So I think I've got the future, key property right now.
You probably do.
20 years, I'm gonna make a killing.
But you think that's the approach to enlighten people, is the economic approach and the economic cost of global warming?
I love the outdoors. And I've had a cross interest in science and being outside my entire life. So to me, especially with the ocean, I love surfing. I love being out on the ocean. To me, there is a sort of artistic cost to global warming in the sense that I don't like what fossil fuel mining is doing to the world. And I feel like global warming is just part of that. The other part of that is plastics being everywhere. Plastics are in everything. They're in all points of the water column, in the Monterey Bay, which is supposed to be a marine sanctuary. You can sail to Hawaii. You're going to see plastic bags the entire way there. When I was in Indonesia, a long time ago even, these beaches where sea turtles are trying to nest, and they're just covered with plastics, all different kinds, not just fishing nets, but just different kinds of polystyrene foam. And I'm like, it's everywhere. I mean, there's no pristine anything almost anywhere in the world. The entire world has been contaminated by plastics from the fossil fuel industry. And to me, even if that didn't have a economic effect, to me, that's like, shitting on the Mona Lisa. I love those pristine areas of the world. And there's an artistic reason to like those, even if they have no monetary value. But on top of that, it's going to cause a lot of problems having plastics in everything. One thing that I'm concerned about, especially with plastics, is estrogen. Most plastics leach something, not just BPA, which everyone's concerned about now as a estrogenic material, but most plastics can leach estrogen-like molecules, and plastics are everywhere. So what is that going to do?
Are you saying I'm going to get boobs? Is that what you're hinting at right now? Am I going to wake up one day with a nice set of boobs?
That would actually might be a plus. I don't know. That kind of stuff concerns me beyond just, global warming. I think there's a lot of other effects of just.
Well, it is funny where people prioritize their fears and their worries, right? I mean, I think I just seen a headline the other day that was like 3 million tons of ice just vanished out of Antarctica. It was just like, it's like they took a picture one day, the next day they came back and just like 3 million tons of ice was gone. Doesn't make a headline. Nobody gives a shit. It just goes by. But you mentioned like fucking avocado shortage. Or you fucking, you know what I mean? You like some rocking chair injures 4 babies that was mostly due to user neglect, and they have to recall, 1 million fucking rocking chairs because 4 dingbat parents didn't realize that you shouldn't put your baby on its head in a rocking chair position, and they got hurt. So we jump all over these things, but yeah, Antarctica, 3 million tons of fucking ice just vanishes out of nowhere, and no biggie. It's fucking, if they can lose 3 million and we barely notice, there must be a lot of ice up there. We don't need it. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you can't come up with implementing solutions until you agree on a problem, but that's part of the issue is that we can't even get the world to agree that there is a problem or what a cause of a problem is. So when do you start applying a solution? You have to get to that step first.
Yeah. I don't know what's being applied right now, but there's some very interesting, what I would call technical fixes that are proposed for global warming, which actually scare me more than global warming.
Let's hear them.
Particles in the upper atmosphere to reflect the sun. I used to work on, all kinds of hacks, everything besides just cutting back on fossil
giant
fuel use.
Black hot air balloons. Well, it's the future. I'm investing in black hot air balloons now.
That's the understated part of Elon's Starlink, his 12,000 satellites. They're all going to have these gigantic fans that are just going to create better shade for the world.
I mean, people have proposed that. That's what you're joking, but people have proposed a giant mirror between the Earth and the sun.
I feel like this was a Simpsons episode.
Yeah, I mean, that is the kind of thing in California. The salmon problem in California is mostly just that there's dams now between where they used to go upriver to breed and the ocean. So they come in and out of the ocean all the time. They need to get upriver to breed, and there's too many dams in the way and a lot of other stuff. But the dams are the number one problem. But their entire environment has changed, and so salmon don't breed well at all in California anymore. And there's all these laws to try and protect them. So instead of just trying to restore the original habitat, they've tried every harebrained scheme you can imagine to keep salmon in the rivers. From originally fish ladders, and they did fish elevators, so they wouldn't have to jump over the dams. Then they did trucking the salmon around the dams.
They need those fish chairs for old people that go up the stairs automatically. If we could just hone fish automatic chairs, I think we'll be all right.
I had seen the fish like suction tubes, think like the old school banking tubes where they would pass the envelopes. I'd seen those before.
Yes.
That there was
those. Yes, I mean everything except trying to restore the habitat. I feel like we're going to go down the same road with these technical fixes for global warming. A lot of people proposing dumping stuff in the ocean so the ocean will take up more carbon with iron. Ultimately, at least in the salmon's case, it's been maybe worse than the original problem. If you need to go back to what caused the problem and undo that, and that's your best solution.
So we've talked about a lot of serious issues. They have a lot of weight to them. How do you end up pulling material from issues
those funny
that are when you actually think about it are quite depressing? How are you able to mold that into something that we should all be laughing at when really it should make you want to go home and hang yourself?
Oh, just me in particular? I should be hanging out?
Well, the future, I mean, we just talked about a lot of bleak outcomes, world's on fire. We're all addicted to opioids. Like, these are all very depressing subjects.
We did go dark. I don't know what we're going to title this episode, but maybe it will be Doomsday with comedian Tim Lee.
There we go.
We'll figure it out.
If these are the pressing issues, the scientific issues that we all enjoy being knowledgeable about, how do you end up pulling comedic material from these subjects to be able to lighten them up, I guess you'd say?
Well, I mean, me particularly, I usually write my thoughts down and then just think about how I want them as a joke. Sometimes some things come to me naturally, and I'll just record it into my phone and listen to it later. And if it's still funny, then I'll do it. But more recently, I've just been trying to write down topics that interest me, and then try and slowly turn them into comedy just by coming back to them over and over again and seeing where I can insert stuff. That's more funny. So I did a video, actually I did pretty well on Reddit recently about opioids. It's a comedy video. I just basically wrote down some topics and then massaged them into comedy slowly. And for me, it's a lot of times it's contrast or contradiction or something like that. But I think one line that I used, for the example, someone for the opioids video was the guy said, when we created these, whatever it was, we didn't know they were dangerous. I'm like, how could you know? How could anyone know that synthetic heroin was going to be addictive? I mean, how could that? Just because the other, drugs in the class are addictive doesn't mean that's going to be addictive, right? Just because morphine's addictive, codeine's addictive, opium's addictive, doesn't mean all the drugs in the class are addictive. Just, things that come to your mind, like lame excuses or whatever it is. I try and massage them into comedy.
From most of the videos, you still try to keep I won't say necessarily a serious tone, but you still try to keep the message, the underlying message within it as still pointing out what your opinion is on that.
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep it lighthearted.
Underlying it.
I keep it lighthearted. I guess I start dark and then move light. I don't know. That's naturally. Comedians tend to have I find that comedians, when they're at least not on stage, have a darker sense of humor generally than they do to the audience, because it's too much for the audience, right? If you're too dark, you have to pull it back a little bit. Other comics are fine with it because we've heard so much comedy that what normally would make someone else laugh, we're like a heroin addict. We need a bigger fix every time just to get the same rush, right? So, comics tend to have, for the most part, very dark senses of humor. And you have to kind of sort of pull it back for a broader audience.
So do you find you have other comedians kind of in this same space that you're working in, is the more intelligent comedy? Do you run into any of your peers that are following that same more intelligent humor path?
Yeah, I think a lot of people trying to do that. I think, whether or not we achieve it is a different.
Well, they had the Kings of Comedy, then they had that redneck tour. Are you guys going to do the original PhDs of comedy? You're gonna get four buddies and go on tour and drive an electric bus.
Boy, that would be nice. At that point, I think I'd have it made. But
I'm trademarking it, asshole. I want a piece of the shirts.
PhDs of comedy, PhDs of laughter. Yeah, I don't know. I just started doing the Nerd Comedy Night here in Carlsbad because this is where I live, and I wanted something close by that I could do now because I have kids and I don't want to travel as much. I don't want to travel. I can't, really. I can't just go out on the road and do it like I used to. So that's why I started the Nerd Comedy Night here. That's sort of my ulterior motive. I like to perform, and I wanted something close by. And I have a lot of other comic friends who live in LA or San Diego, and they want to perform too. And I wanted to do a room that was set up for smart comedy. And hopefully, it's only been a month that I've been doing this, but so far people seem to like the show. And I think it'll grow and it'll be a thing. So if it ends up turning into something big, so be it. But if it doesn't, at least I get to do my art and enjoy it.
So where do you see your comedy progressing from here? I mean, what are you really hoping to kind of move towards?
I'd like total world domination.
Yeah, obviously. A stupid question. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for wasting your time.
I would like people to kneel at my feet as I walk through the. That's the hardest thing. Is people like, so what do you want to do after you graduate? I don't know. I keep doing comedy. That's all I really want to do is keep writing comedy and hopefully having an audience listen to the comedy, because otherwise there's really no point in writing it, right? So that's
well,
really
a lot of
goal.
comedians get into screenwriting and things like that. Have you ever thought about pursuing, writing for an intelligent show, a comedic show, or something along those lines? Or
yeah, I would definitely do that. I wrote a show and sold a show called "Harmful If Swallowed," which was about the pharmaceutical industry, which sort of spawned from my thoughts on that. With my writing partner, we sat down and we wrote a pilot. It got sold. We developed it, and then the company scrapped all television production about a month before we were supposed to go into producing our pilot. So that was a major shift. But we put a lot of work into that, and it's a lot of work to sell a show. You have to go around and talk to a lot of different people, and that's when I sort of learned about how scared people were of doing a show about the pharmaceutical industry. Someone just sat me down and like, listen.
It's like picking a fight with Debo. Like, you just don't do it.
Yeah, I guess. They sat down and they're like, we like your idea, but we have to tell you that pharma is actually our largest sponsor of network television, and we really can't do anything to risk offending them. And so thank you for your time. And I was like, wow, so I guess I'm not going to be able to sell it to anyone who sells advertising, essentially. And I ended up having to sell it to, this company that was founded by a guy from eBay who didn't care about advertising. He was just trying to get good content out.
Yeah.
So I guess your question is, what is my goal? I'm a comedy whore. I just like to perform comedy. I like to write, and hopefully some stuff that I can be at least somewhat proud of.
Yeah, I was just curious because, right now you see a lot of comedians pivoting, like I said, whether it's writing or even throwing up a podcast or furthering kind of the YouTube channel and just trying to live in that space. It's having kids and no longer having that desire to write to drive 3 hours away all the time and do these things. But there's plenty you can do from a simple studio at home. And I just wonder if that's really where you're trying to focus your time and energy is at home, building that comedic audience through the laptop, right? Through those online mediums.
I would love to do that. And I am trying, to get back into that. I just realized, I have a green screen and I started doing this fake news thing, which it took me forever. Right? I just started off and then I had to learn how to do the sound. And then I had to learn how to do the green screen. And then, that takes, then you have to learn how to do the lighting for the green screen, and the keying, and then you have to get the green screen background, and there's all this stuff and putting stuff in the corner. And I just did it piece by piece, and it's just starting to get to the point where I feel like, oh yeah, this looks like at least fake news, or it looks like it sounds like a newscast, and I have enough time to write something for that. So that piece is just getting to the point where I'm happy with it, but I knew it was going to be a process. And I film it right here. You can see this little ball I have.
It's not a death. That's not a Death Star. I thought it was a Death Star.
Yeah, I had to figure that out because my focus kept changing on my phone. Right? So I have my phone in a tripod, and I have this little green screen I pull up. It goes behind here. It's on the floor right now. You can probably see it. It looks like a.
Yep.
Yeah. So that ball I just put up there because it kept changing focus. I'm like, how do I get it to fix focus on something and set the white balance at the same time? Like, I'll just float a white ball where my head will be, and then I'll press the auto and
then just swap the ball out of the way.
Swap the ball out of the way. That's exactly.
Hashtag life hacks. Hashtag life hacks.
So it's like the white balance and the focus at the same time. And it has saved me a huge amount of time.
Fucking first world problems.
Somewhere right now, there's a guy who's like an actual video producer who's just fucking losing his mind right now. What we're talking about, like, no, you idiots! The fuck are you doing over there?
It was like you said
right.
you before. You call yourself a comedian. There is really no gauge of when you become a comedian. You tell a joke, you make someone laugh, you're a comedian. Yeah. You edit one piece of audio, you're an audio engineer.
No, I call myself the audio engineer of this podcast, and and I'm sure audio engineers.
I had a friend who's a musician reach out to me to write his bio, and I was like, why do you want me to write your bio? He's like, you're a writer, right? And I was like, nah, man, I'm not a writer. He's like, man, you've had a blog for a year. You got like 90 articles online. Like, you're a fucking writer. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I'm a writer. It's like, so write my fucking bio. It's like, all right, man. All right, cool.
Yeah, it's sort of the gig economy. It's hard to know when you become whatever it is gig you're doing, right?
You float a white ball on your ceiling. You're a video, a videographer.
Somewhere, I should patent that. You guys are going to laugh right now, but a white ball is worth a fortune.
But it is an interesting time. It's it's why we started the podcast. It's kind of a fun time to create. Yeah, there's a million podcasts, there's a million YouTube channels, whatever else, but there's a couple more than a million people out there, and really all you need to do is find some of them that find you interesting, and you can do that still. I in no way would fault you if you don't want to tour. I think this is now a time that there's a lot of comedians that are living through the podcast world, living through the YouTube space as wildly successful local people.
Yeah, I think there are. Yeah, there are a lot of comics that are doing podcasts, and there are a lot of comics on YouTube. And you kind of need support from the central people, which is, when I first started doing YouTube, it was sort of the Wild West. Someone discovered your video and sent it around, and you would try and send it out to all your people, and they would send it around, and it would grow. Now I don't think you can do much without the support of the people at the heart of YouTube.
I was going to say, are you talking about the support of the algorithm?
The algorithm and whoever wrote the algorithm at Google. It's much more centrally controlled, as most platforms are now. And they don't want it to just sort of, blossom. They're more like the Netflix model.
Well, that's a big thing now, what the shadow banning, they call it, when Instagram and you're just not coming up on people's searches and feeds because you haven't paid the toll.
Whatever it is, I'm sure from their point of view, this is our platform, so we're going to help who we want get to the top. And you do need their support, or else you're not really going to go.
We've had this discussion on the podcast a few times. I did an interview with Cory Doctorow, who's a big digital rights, advocate and things like that. And these companies, they act like they're private companies and they have a right to promote all content, but at the same time, in a contradictory fashion, they claim to just be, we're just the soapbox. People can come here and say whatever they want and how they feel, and then in the back door do all kinds of things and manipulate that in ways that are actually go against our society.
Yeah, I think the Wild West days where it really was just you could say whatever you wanted to and let it float out into the ether are over. They're much more centrally controlled.
Well, they want to shield themselves from libel lawsuits and other, doxing type lawsuits by claiming that they're an open platform, but at the same time run themselves as a private entity and ban people whoever they want, promote whoever they want. It's a very weird time, and I think it's all going to come to a head in the next 3 to 5 years. You're going to see a lot of ugly tech, some tech guys in front of a congressional hearing, and they're not going to like what goes down in those rooms, I don't think.
We'll see, yeah.
To respect your time here, we'll go ahead and wrap up, but thank you for your time. We think a great conversation. If you could take a moment and let us know what is the best way for people to follow you and stay up to date with what you're doing.
Well, if you want to follow me on YouTube, I'm at TXLee1, youtube.com TXLee1, I think is what it was, my original YouTube channel. And I didn't pick a very good name for it, but it's still there.
You're the 50-year-old man that still has Lady Killer 69 as his email. Lady Killer 69 at AOL.
I got, and I have a website, scientistturnedcomedian.com. And if you want to follow me on Facebook or Instagram, I think on Instagram I'm Silicon Laughter, if I'm not mistaken. And Facebook, it's Scientist Turned Comedian as well.
Yeah, and I think that the Scientist Turned Comedian, quick search in Google, generally you can find all of your things.
Yeah.
But again, Tim, appreciate the conversation.
It was fun.
Love what you're doing. I'll see you at Nerd Comedy Night.
Okay.
I'll be back as a fan for the group and
make his stupid ass get up there. Make his dumb ass get up there.
No, I'm not open micing yet.
We'll get you up there for 5. We'll get you up there.
So I told him 5 minutes, asshole. Don't be scared.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, hey, thanks.
Take care.
Take care.
All right, nerds, thanks for listening to episode 18 of the Nerd Cantina Show. This was our Cantina conversation with Tim Lee, and he's got such an interesting way into comedy.
Yeah, I found it, interesting that, like I said, he takes a lot of these current trending scientific topics that aren't really funny by nature, and he's able to weave them into, a routine for his science-y audience, which is quite interesting to me.
Yeah, and if anybody's listening that's in Southern California, out in Carlsbad, his Nerd Comedy Night is where I found him, and it's funny, and it's a really like intimate, tiny room. He laughed about it when you talk about the Mexican restaurant. It's literally in the upstairs of a Mexican restaurant right now.
Get a horchata with your laughs.
But it's good. It's intimate. It's good comedy.
Well, and when we go to our Podbean analytics, I want to say California is our biggest listenership right now. I don't know if it's because you do a good job of sharing, or if it's just coincidence. But yeah, I want to say when you click the map, it's California is the highest.
It's just sense. A nerd dense population here.
And I'm still a little pissed at Arkansas. We have 0 listens in Arkansas. So if you have friends in Arkansas, tell them to get on their fucking shit. Like I'm really starting to hold a grudge against Arkansas.
At least one. Let's get one tick mark in Arkansas.
One fucking click from Arkansas. Could I get a fucking click, man? Where you at? Yeah. Was that Baton Rouge? Like where you at, Baton Rouge?
In the end, I thought this conversation was great. It's a good backstory as far as his background in academic studies, and then fleeing academia because he
and not just no academia. Like he flat out said he was coding. Like he was like, yeah, I had a job writing code for like man, you can't get much nerder than a professional coder.
But he got bored there and took a leap into something he had passion for, and it's a fun niche. Hey, I urge everybody to go and Google Scientist Turned Comedian, find his Facebook page, find his YouTube page. He's got some really good, smart comedy that's in there. These PowerPoint seminars, these pseudo academic seminars where he's just telling jokes through dry PowerPoint it's my style of comedy. I love it. And then his nerd news that he's building into now that he talked about is it's really funny.
Yeah, and if you guys haven't seen like a recurring theme with the Cantina conversations over the last few weeks, it's basically people following their passions, right? Yeah. I mean, we've for the last almost month now, we've had guests that in different aspects of nerd culture that have just really woke up one day and said, no, I'm going to go for it, and I really want to encourage our audience to do the same. It's inspired me to pursue my comic book kind of dreams and things like that. And, I started journaling and writing articles on our blog about, my process now too, into creating this comic book. But yeah, whatever your passions are as a nerd, as a musician, as a whatever you enjoy, we're trying to put out some things that inspire you to take that final leap. You know, if you're looking over the edge of creativity and something's holding you back, like I hope these interviews over the last few weeks have maybe given you that final push to jump over that edge and take a chance.
Yeah, nerds everywhere are doing interesting shit, and support them and listen.
And that's another key thing is we all need to support each other.
As I say, speaking of supporting nerds, we urge you to like, share, follow us on all social media platforms. And if you got a buck, if you were entertained by the clown show that was Cantina Conversation, ask that you take a quick stop over at Patreon and urge you to support. It goes a long way towards what we're trying to build and furthers our ability to go out and reach out and find interesting nerds and hopefully bring you interviews that you're finding some entertainment out of.
Yeah, I mean, you've given bucks to Les. Let's all be perfectly honest here. We you know, and I don't care if it's a solid buck. You could look at it as 4 quarters, 100 pennies. You know what I mean?
Take that
like
couch
whatever rationalizes you to click that button. You know, you find more on the floor and or in your car. You know, so just click that button, give us a buck. And we can upgrade some of our tech, make our lives a little easier, push these things out a little faster. Once again, ain't too proud to beg.
All right, well, that said, this will wrap up episode 18 of the Nerd Cantina Show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you soon, nerds.
See you next week, nerds.
Real quick, we just wanted to mention one of our favorite new apps, which is Podcoin. So assuming that because you're listening to our podcast today that you happen to be a podcasting nerd, and if you are, I can't see any reason why you wouldn't want to get paid for your time.
I'm a big fan of getting paid to do stuff that I do in my daily routine anyways. I sign up for all the rewards programs possible. And with Podcoin, you actually get paid to listen to podcasts. So every minute that goes by that you're listening to your podcast, you are throwing away potential money.
So go ahead, download Podcoin app on either through iTunes or through the Google Play Store. And when you sign up with the promo code NerdCantina.
One word. That'll get you 300 free coins towards your account and get you on your way to earning that first reward from either Amazon gift card, Target gift cards, all kinds of things. You could also donate your coins to your favorite charity that they offer. If you're going to be listening to podcasts anyways, you might as well get some free stuff for doing it. So download the Podcoin app, put in the code the Nerd Cantina, get your free coins, and start earning money while you listen to our show.